So moving right along, before we go on to the next few verses in the Torah, I wanted to share what the Dudaei Reuven says about our parsha, because the Dudaei Reuven's message here is fire. He has a fire message, and I think that you'll enjoy it. Okay, so the Dudaei Reuven says as follows. It says, what is the purpose and the goal of settling the land of Israel? What's the purpose of it? And he starts by really focusing on the Bikurim ceremony, which is something we spoke about on Monday. We're going over again. I'll just read the first two verses, and we'll then talk about his question. It says, when you come to the land, when you come to the land that Hashem, your God, is giving to you, and you inherit it, and you dwell in it. You shall take from the first fruits of the land, that you bring from your land. No saying that God, Hashem your God, is giving to you. And you place it in a basket. And you go to the place that Hashem will choose for you, to dwell there. Okay. So now, those are the verses. So the Dudaei Reuven asks some questions. It says later on in the passage, it says, you come to the Kohen, will be in those days, and you say to him, today I've come, you say today to Hashem your God, because I came to the land that our forefathers have sworn to us, and the Kohen will take the basket from your hands and will place it before the altar of God. So the Sifri, the Midrash, says about this passage, I have here, by the way, this beautiful work called Chumash in Biur Midrashei Halacha. This is a beautiful work that I got from Rabbi Ben Mintz's library, Rabbi Ben Mintz of blessed memory, and it was arranged by Yechiel Michal Stern. And so, okay, so this is what the Midrash says. What does the Midrash say about this passage? Let me just show you. The Midrash states that, what does it mean when it states that you shall take from the first fruits of your land? Let me cite the Midrash here. Hold on. And I'll just read it from the Dudaei Reuven. And this was quoted by Rashi. Says the Dudaei Reuven. He quotes the Sifri, and the Sifri says, do this mitzvah shebishvila tikanes la'aretz, meaning do the mitzvah of the Bikurim ceremony. Do the mitzvah of the first fruits. Again, you bring your first fruits from the 7 species, you bring them to the land, you bring them to the Kohen, you place it in a basket and bring them to the Kohen, and the Kohen waves them with you, and you recite this passage. It says, do this mitzvah so that you can enter into the land. And the Dudaei Reuven, as always, he always begins with tremendous questions. He says the question is so obvious and it's so simple, but yet it's such a great question, and we can't understand the passage without it. He says that it says in the Talmud that they were not obligated to do the mitzvah of Bikurim until they came into the land, meaning to say when they were on the other side of the Jordan, and when they were dwelling in the plains of Moab, they didn't do the mitzvah of Bikurim. We don't do the mitzvah of Bikurim in New York. We don't do the mitzvah of Bikurim in Poland. You do this mitzvah only once you have conquered the land and divided it. Well, if that's the case, how can the Talmud say, do this mitzvah so that you can enter into the land? It doesn't make any sense. You only do this mitzvah once you're already in the land, asks the Dudaei Reuven. So why does the Talmud say, do this mitzvah in order to enter into the land? Does anybody have an answer to that? If you do, raise your hand. And then he asks another question. He asks another question. He says, I don't understand. The mitzvah of the Bikurim passage only takes place 5 years after you've entered into the land. It only takes place after 5 years. Why? The first 3 years, that a fruit tree is planted, you don't eat from it. It's orla. You're not allowed to touch it. The fourth year, you bring the fruits to Jerusalem and eat them there. That's called netaravai. Only in the fifth year do you have the ability to fulfill this mitzvah of bikurim. So if that's the case, how can it say in the Torah, today I've come to the land? That's not the day you've come to the land. This is the fifth year that you're in the land. So those are the two fundamental questions that the Dudaei Reuven asks. First of all, how can you do this mitzvah in order that you can enter the land? Where you can't do this mitzvah until you're already in the land. And second question, you say, today I've come into the land. No, you didn't come into the land today. You came into the land 5 years ago. So why are you only saying, today I'm coming into the land? This is what the Dudaei Reuven asks. And so, hold on, let me see, is anybody, okay, so the Dudaei Reuven then continues, and he says, in the passage of the Bikurim, it says in the Torah, you shall respond and say to Hashem your God. Okay, hold on, let me just pause. I thought Stanley was getting ready to ask. Hold on 1 second. So again, again, just to review, the Dudaei Reuven has two questions about the Bikurim. Why does the Talmud say in Tractate Kedushin that do this mitzvah of the first fruits so that you can enter the land? Well, how are you supposed to do this mitzvah so that you can enter the land when the mitzvah only applies in the land? And the second question he asks is, it says specifically that you do this mitzvah. It says when you say this passage, you say, today I've come into the land, when we know for a fact that the earliest you could possibly do this mitzvah is only in the fifth year, because the first 3 years are orla, and the fourth year is netaravai. So you only do the mitzvah in the fifth year. So why are you saying today I've come into the land? So here's where the Dudaei Reuven basically will give his answer. He says, the passage of the Bikurim, it says in the Torah, you say before Hashem your God, my father was an Arami Oved Avi. Rashi says it means an Aramean, i.e. Lavan tried to destroy my father Jacob, and he went down to Egypt and he lived there, and he became a great nation, and God led us out of Egypt with a strong arm, Yad Chazakah, with his Ronutuyah. Okay, and he brought us to this place, and he gave us this land flowing with milk and honey. Okay, and so the Torah is explaining all the passages, all the events that happened to Israel from the moment they left Egypt until they came to the land which they're dwelling in. And why is this whole history? This whole history concludes, and now I'm bringing these fruits to the land that God gave me. So why do we have to tell the whole history here? Why do we need a history lesson at this point? What's the purpose of it? So the purpose of it, this is his one sentence, and he makes this point over the next couple of pages. I don't have to read it all in depth. But he says, his main point is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving the land of Israel. HaKadosh Baruch Hu hinchil at Eretz Yisrael. God is giving the land of Israel to the Jewish people, not just so that they can have a place to live. I think the Dudaei Reuven was a Zionist, and he's saying, we don't need Uganda, which is what Herzl was saying, but rather this inheritance was connected to the main purpose. The main purpose, the foundational idea of the land is Torah and mitzvos. The whole land has special value for us only in the sense that this is a land filled with our Torah and mitzvos. Meaning to say, the land of Israel was given to the Jewish people not because we were in any way better than the other nations because of their identity or where they're from, but only because the Jewish people accepted the Torah at Sinai and the commandments. And that is what gives us the right to inherit it. So therefore, this is the idea. When a person brings the Bikurim, the first fruits, there he has the commandment basically not only to bring the fruits, but to say why he is meriting to receive these fruits. What's the only reason why he's meriting to receive these fruits? Only because of the Torah and the mitzvahs, because God has given us the opportunity to accept the Torah and the mitzvahs. And that's the only reason. Meaning to say, when person brings the first fruits, the person is not only recognizing that God has given us fruits, but the person is recognizing that the Torah was given to us, that the land was given to us on the condition that the land is infused with the values of Torah and mitzvos. And so therefore, this is the idea. When basically when the Jewish people are, this is the idea why he says that do this mitzvah so that you can merit the land. Meaning to say, you have been living in the land, but it's only by doing this mitzvah, even after 5 years, that you're showing that this land is no longer the land of the Canaanites, but it's the land of Eretz Israel. That's what turns this land from just a land into Holy Land, your performance of the mitzvot. And to make this point very sharp and very critical today, to bring it really into today's world, the point is like a dagger. If the land reflects the Torah values, then the land has meaning and holiness. But if the land is not a reflection of the values of what it means to be Jewish, then the land is just like any other land. That's what the Dudaei Reuven is saying. It's a very, very powerful passage, very powerful idea. And so that's his idea. Meaning to say, I'll read a sentence. The number of years he lived in the land, they only really start from the day that he brings the first fruits and fulfills the Torah. And that's his concept. So I just want to leave that passage of the Dudaei Reuven here for us to understand this fundamental idea. Let me just summarize it before we move on to the next topic and take some questions. The Dudaei Reuven is saying, there are two questions about the Bikurim. Why does it say we do this mitzvah in order to come into the land? We're already in the land. He answers that question by saying, you're in the land, but it's not the land of Israel. You're in the land of Canaan. It's only when you do the mitzvos that you're in the land of Israel. And that's why it says, today I fulfilled it. What do you mean? It's already the 5th year that you're there. No, today I show. I tell the history. I tell the whole story. I tell why I deserve this land only because of the Torah. Today it becomes the land of Israel, not the land of Canaan. And that's his passage. And the relevance for us today is that today, when Hashem, through Hashem's ultimate, infinite kindness, has given the Jewish people the land of Israel, we always have to remember that the land of Israel has meaning for us, if it's a place that reflects the values of the Torah and the mitzvos. But if it's not a place that reflects the values of the Torah and the mitzvos, then it's a land just like any other land. God forbid. Okay, let's see that there is a question.